Good evening. This is Sandy Shellis, and tonight was totally unplanned, and I was really not feeling it. My husband's had the flu, and I mean, really the flu with a swab influenza flu, and it's just been a tough week, but I got inspired. And we talk about the environment, we talk about climate change, we talk about so much of the stuff that's going on there in that arena, that I came across an article that completely had nothing to do really with the environment we live in, or environmental degradation, or sea level rise, or any of that. It has to do with marijuana. And in the United States, yeah, all over the world, marijuana is an issue. But in the United States, there have been many states that have legalized, like New York State, for medical. And there are the pros and cons. There are studies, there are websites, there are a lot of information. So I thought I would start with this article tonight from the Wall Street Journal. Never really use them. They are the tool of the establishment, so to speak. But the dude that wrote it, his name is Alex Berenson. And I'm going to show you his Twitter in a little bit. But in the meantime, we're just going to go through this article. And whoever joins. You know, it is what it is for me to do this, because I thought it was interesting. The rabbit hole it took me down to go, through this. I haven't read a lot, I have to say, on the people that really are dead set against it. So here we go. Over the past 30 years, a shrewd and expensive lobbying campaign has made Americans more tolerant of marijuana. In November of 2018, Michigan became the 10th state to legalize recreational cannabis use. New Jersey and others may soon follow. Already, more than 200 million Americans live in states that have legalized marijuana for medical or recreational use. Yet, even as marijuana use has become more socially acceptable, psychiatrists and epidemiologists have reached a consensus that it presents more serious risks than people realize. That's when I knew that I had something here that I had to go down the rabbit hole and get my mind on. Contrary to the predictions of both advocates and opponents, legalization hasn't led to a huge increase in people using the drug casually. About 15% of Americans used cannabis at least once in 2017, up from 10% in 2006, according to the federal government's National Survey on Drug Use and Health. By contrast, almost 70% of Americans had an alcoholic drink in the past year. But the number of Americans who use cannabis heavily is soaring. In 2006, about 3 million Americans reported using the drug at least 300 times a year. That was the standard for daily use, right? 300 times a year, according to this article. And remember, this is the Wall Street Journal. And hey, let's say hi for, hey, hi. Today's topic is, I'm reading this article from the Wall Street Journal by this. Well, we'll get into it after the article, because you got to hear the rest of this. So the guy, approaching 12 million Americans who drank every day. Put another way, 1 in every 15 drinkers consumed alcohol daily. 1 in 5 marijuana users used cannabis that often. And they are consuming cannabis that is far more potent than ever before. As measured by the amount of THC it contains. THC, or delta-9 tetracannabinol, is the chemical responsibility for the drug's psychoactive effects. In the 1970s, most marijuana contained less than 2% THC. Today, Marijuana routinely contains 20 to 25% THC thanks to sophisticated farming and cloning techniques and to the demand of users to get a stronger high more quickly. In states where cannabis is legal, many users prefer extracts that are nearly pure THC. Cannabis advocates often argue that the drug can't be as a neurotoxic as studies suggest because otherwise Western countries would have seen population-wide increases in psychosis alongside marijuana use, rising marijuana use. In reality, accurately tracking psychosis cases is impossible in the US. The government carefully tracks diseases such as cancer with central registries, but no such system exists for schizophrenia or other severe mental illnesses. Some population level data does exist, though. Research from Finland and Denmark, two countries that track mental illness more accurately, shows a significant increase in psychosis since 2000, following an increase in cannabis use. And last September, a large survey found a rise in serious mental illness in the US, too. In 2017, 7.5% of young adults met the criteria for serious mental illness, double the rate in 2008. And it's all the evil weed. None of these studies prove that rising cannabis use has caused population-wide increases in psychosis or other mental illness, although they do offer suggestive evidence of a link. What is clear is that in individual cases, marijuana can cause psychosis, and psychosis is a high-risk factor for violence. What's more, much of that violence occurs when psychotic people are using drugs. As long as people with schizophrenia are avoiding recreational drugs, they are only moderately more likely to become violent than healthy people. But when they use drugs, their risk of violence skyrockets. The drug they are most likely to use is cannabis. The most obvious way that cannabis fuels violence in psychotic people is through its tendency to cause paranoia. Now, even marijuana advocates acknowledge that the drug can cause paranoia. The risk is so obvious that users joke about it, and dispensaries advertise certain strains are less likely to do so. But for people with psychotic disorders, paranoia can fuel extreme violence. A 2007 paper in the Medical Journal of Australia looked at 88 defendants who had committed homicide during psychotic episodes. It found that most of the killers believed they were in danger from the victim. And most often, and almost 2/3 reported misusing cannabis, more than alcohol and amphetamines combined. Well, that's it. Everybody that uses cannabis, mentally ill. And that's not making light of the real problems in the country of mental illness and in the world. Okay. But the link between marijuana and violence doesn't appear limited to people with pre-existing psychosis. Researchers have studied alcohol and violence for generations, proving that alcohol is a risk factor for domestic abuse, assault, and even murder. Alcohol! Far less work has been done on marijuana, in part because advocates have stigmatized anyone who raises the issue. Still, there are studies showing that marijuana use is a significant risk factor for violence. You're on your way to the refrigerator. I'm sorry. It's supposed to be fair and impartial. A 2012 paper in the Journal of Interpersonal Violence examining a federal study of more than 9,000 adolescents. Okay, there we go right here. I in no way advocate adolescents, anyone under the age of consent, 18 to 21, to smoke any marijuana, drink any, or do anything illegal. So that is number one there. That is not what I am advocating, what anybody advocates, right? But they're doing this on adolescents. And of course, we all know kids smoke dope. How many of us were kids that smoked dope? All right, so this was 9,000 adolescents found that marijuana use was associated with a doubling of domestic violence in the US. A 2017 paper in the Journal of Social Psychiatry and Psychiatric Epidemiology examining drivers of violence among 6,000 British and Chinese men found that drug use was linked to a 5-fold increase in violence, and the drug used was nearly always cannabis. Before states legalized recreational cannabis, advocates predicted that legislation would let police focus on hardened criminals rather than on marijuana smokers and thus reduce violent crime. Some advocates even claimed that legalization has reduced violent crime. In a 2017 speech calling for federal legalization, Senator Cory Booker, a Democrat from New Jersey, said that these states are seeing decreases in violent crime. This dude says, Mr. Booker is wrong. The first 4 states to legalize marijuana for recreational use were Colorado and Washington in 2014 and Alaska and Oregon in 2015. Combined, these 4 states had about 450 murders and 30,300 aggravated assaults in 2013. In 2017, they had almost 620 murders and 38,000 aggravated assaults, an increase far greater than the national average. Knowing exactly how much of that increase is related to cannabis is impossible without researching every crime. So he's making the most flimsy little link in the reader's brain, completely flimsy. But for centuries, people all over the world have understood that cannabis causes mental illness and violence, just as they've known that opiates cause addiction and overdose. Hard data on the relationship between marijuana and madness dates back 150 years to British asylum registers in India. And yet, 20 years ago, the U.S. moved to encourage wider use of cannabis and opiates. In both cases, we decided we could outsmart the drugs, enjoying their benefits without their costs. And in both cases, we were wrong. Opiates are riskier than cannabis, and the overdose deaths they cause are a more imminent crisis, so public and government attention has focused on them. Soon the mental illness and violence that follow cannabis use also may be too widespread to ignore. I'm so sorry that I'm giggling because, well, first of all, I have a legal card for it, and it helps my pain to a degree. And geez, I wonder next if I might be punching the computer. I think the worst thing I might be doing is going to the fridge after this. But anyway, weight gain. Yes, exactly. But that's what she said, weight gain. I know that. It does happen. But you see, you talk about the munchies and you talk about all those things, but the seriousness of this. And of course, Lee, it's I don't believe the article. Of course I read the article because okay, I'm going to show you the guy's Twitter feed. And I don't need to unmute it, but I do have, and then I do have something I'm going to go to that's interesting about what Portugal did with legalizing drugs. So I'm going to get rid of that Wall Street Journal screen. And I am going to show you his Twitter screen. It's pretty funny. So under the article, he says things that make me laugh. Being told that I'm a shill for the drug industry. Ask Eli Lilly about that. Can you guys see me when I put that up? Can you see me when I'm looking at it? Just tell me yes or no, because I can't tell. It's hard to tell from this. Aaron says, is this the Onion? No, it's the Wall Street Journal. It's insanity, okay? But anyway, let's go. Just tell me that you saw me when I was looking at the Twitter page. All right, so he goes, things that make me laugh, being told I'm a shill for the drug industry. Ask Eli Lilly about that. He said, then he put studies in mice being cited to show that THC has medicinal value, being cursed at the same time by people who insist marijuana relaxes them. This guy, his whole Twitter feed is about this. You can see me? Good. Okay, well, you can see his Twitter feed then. then there was one part where he goes down and talks about, and this was great. They were talking about the crime. Since now that marijuana is legal in so many places or decriminalized or whatever, there's going to be so much more crime. And then people were putting up that there was crime, liquor stores, much more. But he put up things that were articles like, he's giving you this idea, direct cause idea. Like here, let's see. But there is a point to some of this. And he does link cannabis gets people off opioids, and British Columbia has some of the world's highest rate of cannabis use. Now, he does bring that whole thing up, and I'm not equipped to do that right now, to go into the entire issue of British Columbia. And I know, Dee Dee, you're with us. I'm not. Okay. So, but people were really talking about the fentanyl, and they were talking about other things but to make the direct correlation to me of the issues with cannabis like that, I don't know. It does. Michael says it reminds him of Reefer Madness. It just kind of does. What they do, and what this dude does, is he doesn't, they don't discuss the underlying sociological causes for all of these crimes. They try to make a causal link in the mind of the reader, just like Reefer Madness, just like the fear mongering over the wall. Just like the fear mongering over that wall and border security, and nobody wanting to know and talk about the environmental species destruction and all that. But it just, I don't know. I guess it really did bring up stuff, and that's why I wanted to read the article and show you what's out there. Obviously, there's a lot of people that are really against it. And if it's working for people, why? Why be against it, right? So many reasons. Okay, I'm going to get rid of this. And for a minute, I am going to then I'm going to segue into something else I have on this, and we'll talk about some of your comments. Kim says cannabis and opioids are on two different realms. Absolutely. And they even have a place, but we're not going there. They have a place, but we're not going to go there. I do want to go into marijuana from Medline Plus, because I went on to the national, the federal government. The federal government page is the National Institute of Health, who's behind it. There's also a lot of kind of fear mongering on it. I do think so. I know people who've smoked pot for ever and have had wonderful jobs and careers and families and lives and never did anything wrong, maybe gained a few pounds. But I just thought this Wall Street Journal article, and the Wall Street Journal, stock market, yuppies, rich, the 1%, fear, fear, fear. But let me tell you before I go on. I heard something today, and this was about the former Speaker of the House in the United States. Somebody help me here. It was during the Nancy Pelosi time. Anyway, he's now a lobbyist for the marijuana industry, Republican he is. And he was a former Speaker of the House, right? So one of the problems that I was thinking about as I was reading that whole thing, and it was the whole profit motive and taxation. And I read that in some places taxation on this legal marijuana could be up to 45% tax. And I thought, well, originally years ago, I guess when we thought about legalizing marijuana, we thought, okay, people would be able to grow their own plants. And, I don't know if we were if we were thinking that it was going to be, all these like medical dispensaries and stuff, it started medically. That's a good thing. But I went into Medline, and they do have, there's a lot of negatives when you're looking on these government sites. It can cause problems with memory, learning, and behavior. Smoking can cause some of the same coughing and breathing problems as smoking cigarettes. You can't be wrong, all wrong. Some people get addicted to marijuana after using it for a while. It is more likely to happen if they use marijuana every day or started using it when they were teenagers. And then they go on to the different states, and there's a lot of research though in here. But now you don't know where you want to go sometimes that to get your information, because you don't know anymore if the government is in the United States is being told what to put up when it wasn't that way before. We have many herbs and weeds that are legal in the US and are stronger than morphine. Cannabis is mild. Okay, Lee. That's cool. And Heidi says, our government has been funding research on marijuana in Israel for years. Right on. Right on. See, we're going to go into some more stuff on that. I did find one article from I don't have it to put up, and then I'm going to go into a little video if it works, because this is fun. From Prohibition to Progress, a status report on marijuana legalization. And I'll put up the link. There's, I probably should have done this so you could have seen the graphs. Social justice impacts. See, now, according to this website, marijuana arrests are down, and then states are allocating marijuana revenues for social good. Colorado distributed $230 million to the Colorado Department of Education between 2015 and 2017 to fund school construction, early literacy, bullying prevention, and behavioral health. Oregon allocates 40% of marijuana tax revenue to its state school fund, depositing $34 million into the fund so far. The state also distributes 20% to alcohol and drug treatment. Nevada's 15% wholesale tax is projected to bring in $56 million over the next 2 years to fund state schools. Washington dedicates 25% to substance use disorder treatment, education, and prevention. The state also distributes 55% of its marijuana tax revenues to fund basic health plans. Alaska will collect an estimated $12 million annually, which will fund drug treatment and community residential centers. California and Massachusetts will invest a share of their marijuana tax revenues in the communities most adversely impacted by drug arrests and incarceration, particularly low-income communities of color, to help repair the harms of unequal drug law enforcement. Then they go into public health, how youth marijuana use has been stabilized. And of course, again, I will say, this is not having to do with anybody under a certain age. It's not at all. Marijuana legalization is linked to lower rates of opioid-related harm. Increased access to marijuana has been associated with reductions in some of the most troubling harms associated with opioids, including opioid overdose deaths and untreated opioid disorders. Now, there's a lot of statistics here where this dude doesn't. He's putting up stuff that is, he's putting up articles. He's not putting up statistics. He's putting up things that don't give you science backgrounds, to understand. Oh, this is a good one. You see this one? Cannabis causes psychosis. Psychosis causes violence. The advocacy community can keep pretending otherwise, but nothing is more real than a murder. But, everything he does and everything he says is, it's not statistically significant causation. It's not. And cannabis is not the catalyst, so to speak, for the crime. All right. And so this one, I'll put it up, marijuana in the economy. But the one thing, though, that they say the marijuana industry is creating jobs. Preliminary estimates suggest that the legal marijuana industry employs between 165,000 to 230,000 full and part-time workers across the country. And there's areas of growth. And the thing about it is, though, you know, it gets big, and then it's just like everything else. You know, it's going to be ruled by the conglomerates and not the big pharma, so to speak, but the big green, I would imagine, because there's got to be somebody that that produces it, right? You know, so that it comes to the New York State dispensary after you get a prescription for it and smoke it, the vape or the liquid. But they are having problems with the liquid, getting the liquid. Let's see who's out there. Oh, okay. Heidi says, watch A Life of Its Own, The Truth About Medical Marijuana on Netflix. It's a great show. I will. I'm open-minded to whatever. That's why I'm on here reading this, even though, you know, I want to giggle a little bit. But I'm trying not to sit here and say the guy is completely full of shit, like a lot of people on Twitter have said to him, the writer. He's coming out with a book. That's one of the big things. He's coming out with a book. I'm not even going to tell you the name of it. I'm not going to publicize his book. But you know what? The guy used to write for the New York Times. They probably should can't him. Okay. So let's segue over to a little video I have. And let's make sure this works. This is what happened in Portugal. You know, because of the way the writer of that article was trying to link crime so much with legalization and all. And in the United States, I don't think we quite have gotten it yet on how to get a handle of on crime because of income inequality and the things that are happening in our country. But here's how Portugal handled it. And I'm going to play this, and hopefully it's going to show well.
In 2001, Portugal had one of the worst drug problems in Europe, so it was desperate enough to try something radical. Possession and use of all illegal drugs was decriminalized. You would no longer be arrested. Instead, authorities launched a major health campaign. People who were found with a small amount were referred to support services and got help with treatment and harm reduction. Drug use was seen as a chronic disease, not a crime. The results were stunning. The number of people who tried drugs and kept using them fell from 44% to 28% by 2012. The use of hard drugs decreased, as well as HIV and hepatitis infections and overdoses. Making drugs legal might overall help society much more than it harms it. Argument number 3. Marijuana is addictive and unhealthy. It needs to remain illegal to keep harm at a minimum. While marijuana addiction is more psychological than physical, it is still a real problem. The demand for treatment for marijuana addiction has more than doubled in the past decade alone. In total, about 10% of people who try marijuana will become addicted. This is also related to higher THC levels. A study released in 2017 tracked the potency of marijuana in Dutch coffee shops over a period of 16 years. For every 1% increase in THC, 60 more people entered treatment nationwide. In terms of negative health effects, some studies linked marijuana use to increased blood pressure and lung problems, while a 2016 study found that marijuana use was unrelated to physical health problems, except for a higher risk of gum disease. Some studies showed that marijuana use alters teenagers' brains and decreases their intelligence, but when more recent studies took drinking and smoking into account, the results were inconclusive. Overall, research shows that taking any drugs while the brain is still in development is bad for you. But the truth is, we don't know yet how unhealthy marijuana is. We need more funding for research, which is hard to get while marijuana remains illegal. We can put what we know into perspective, though. 16% of people who consume alcohol become alcoholics, and 32% of people who try cigarettes become smokers. We know for sure alcohol affects your brain, destroys your liver and causes cancer, while tobacco clogs your arteries, destroys your lungs and also causes cancer. 3.3 million people die from alcohol abuse each year, while smoking kills more than 6 million people. Nobody is suggesting tobacco and alcohol are harmless just because they're legal. Also, nobody is seriously proposing to prohibit them, even though they are extremely dangerous. Legality is a way to exercise some control over them, especially when it comes to protecting young people. It's often much harder to buy legal drugs for teenagers than to buy illegal ones. Official sellers can get hefty fines and lose their license if they sell to underage kids. Legality creates incentives here that drug dealers can't exploit. So making marijuana legal doesn't mean endorsing it. It means taking responsibility for the risks it poses. It could also open the floodgates to tons of new research that shows us how harmful it really is and to whom. Conclusion. Marijuana is a drug. And just like any other drug, it has negative consequences for a sizable portion of the people who use it. It is not harmless. The best way to protect society from its negative consequences seems to be legalization and regulation. Thanks to our partnership with Funk, this video has already been available on our German channel for 2 weeks. Check it out and subscribe.
Okay, so it was interesting, that one, because that video was giving you information, not telling you, oh, it's okay to greatest go out and, just smoke everything, but it was saying it should be legal so that it can be, I don't know, controlled, monitored. I thought that was a pretty good clip too. Hi, Lori. I mean, I'm certainly not an expert in the subject. Let's see and Jeffrey's here. Hey, Jeff. All right, so I'm going to go on because we talked about the article in the Wall Street Journal, which is, really over the top about how unsafe it should be illegal. I'm just going to recap before we go to, whoops, wait a minute. I don't want to do that. Okay. I'll just move this up so I can show you. The article was in the Wall Street Journal, and it's called "Marijuana is More Dangerous Than You Think." But I'm going to get rid of that too. Okay. I'm going to end with a couple of different things. So we're going to go around the world. We talked about these things and talked about the medical. Now I'm going to go around the world. And I'm going to tell you what people are doing in different countries and what you can do in different countries. Now, the first thing I'm going to read to you is pretty quickly because I know I've been on for quite a while. There was an article I picked out of the Sun, and this is about the harshest laws in the world. In Japan, the cannabis control law can dish out a 5-year prison sentence along with hard labor for smoking a single joint. Similar sentences are dished out for possession in Malaysia and Indonesia. While weed smokers in the Philippines aren't immediately thrown in jail, if you're caught with the drug, you're sent to rehab for at least 6 months. Repeat offenders can face a prison sentence for between 6 and 12 years. If you thought those punishments were harsh, they're nothing compared to the penalty given to those who deal the drug. Those caught trafficking or selling marijuana, even in small quantities, can be sentenced to death in the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines. That's something, huh? It's almost like the dude that wrote that article for the Wall Street Journal would like the United States to do that. Maybe what's behind him is the prison industrial complex. That's something. Okay, So I'm going to close this up with just, it was cute from a place. Where are the best places to go, or where you can go? We know Canada, Mexico, Belize. Belize, you can smoke in Belize. In late 2017, the government of Belize was kind enough to decriminalize cannabis in an amount up to 10 grams. You can smoke it in your home, or someone else's, provided you've gotten explicit permission. Let's see, Costa Rica, yeah, Jamaica, Argentina, Colombia, and now we're going to go to Cambodia. This person says, I love Cambodia for many reasons, but among them is that you can go out to a restaurant, see a dish or menu marked happy, and know that it's likely been infused with something fun. Weed is still illegal here, but it's culturally accepted, ubiquitous, and cheap. That's pretty wild. Laos, should you smoke? Yeah. So marijuana is illegal in Laos, but like no one cares. So they go through these different places. Let's see. Belgium, if you're 18 or older, you can enjoy decriminalized marijuana in Belgium, provided the amount comes in at no more than 3 grams. Be discreet, which is to say don't smoke in public. Italy. Most likely. Sale and cultivation will get you in big trouble in Italy, but possession of small amounts for personal use is a misdemeanor. You could face a fine and potentially have identification documents like your passport suspended, but you won't end up in jail. Italy has historically been a huge producer of cannabis, and the momentum to legalize these days is something powerful. So I guess it's all over. The Netherlands, should you smoke there? Yeah, they said it's been legal to smoke in coffee shop in the Netherlands for decades. It's been illegal to grow. But in 2017, a bill to partially legalize marijuana cultivation showed that the country may hopefully be headed for full legalization. And then I told you about Portugal and Spain and Switzerland. There's some decriminalization. Croatia, personal use is decriminalized in Croatia, but don't sell anything. Croatia's coastline is one of the most beautiful regions in the world. This person said, so it's a lot. There's only, I guess, a lot of places. Russia. Now, this is what this person wrote. I'll put these links up when I get a chance. You might have expected something a bit more stringent from Russia, but the government has decriminalized grass in amounts of up to 6 grams. The country recently allowed World Cup fans coming in from other countries to bring their medical marijuana and their medical cocaine and medical heroin. Well, anyway, I think it's been an interesting discussion. Thanks for coming. Anybody want to questions? Lori, hi, Lori. Jamaica. She says it's a national pastime. Oh, Steve's here with us. Well, Steve, you missed the whole thing on goes from the Wall Street Journal article all the way up to where you can smoke weed or how you can smoke weed around the world. And, you know, we do have I guess this channel, you know, people from around the world, which is pretty cool. And I love to learn about the different places, you know, read about how they handle the socio-economic and societal issues. And all of it is under an umbrella of an environment. We live environmentally. The sicker the environment is, the sicker the people are. Aaron says, do they have a private prison industry? In which country, Aaron? If you're still with me? Lori said, Paul McCartney spent 9 days for pot in Japan. Oh my God, I think I remember that. I do. Hi, Trevor. Great day, everyone. Happy 2019. Same to you. Trevor, you live in British Columbia. I touched on that a little bit as far as cannabis use, but it's too big of an issue to go into how they linked it with opioids and crime. You know, it's a big subject. It's a really big subject. Turkey. Oh, Turkey. You want me to look up Turkey, Aaron? I still have it. Let's see if it's in here. Oh, Turkey. No, 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 no. You don't want to do anything like that there. No, I don't think that's one of the countries that was friendly towards anything like that. All right, I'm going to do something. I have to give a shameless plug before I go. This person's name is Desert File on YouTube, and I really like his videos. And he came out with a book called Desert Soliloquy: A Perfectly Sane Misanthrope Hides in the Desert. Okay. And this is David. He's got a YouTube channel. Again, it's called, he's Desert Filed. I can't wait to read the book, so I wanted to give him a little plug. Desert Soliloquy. I think it's going to be great. He does, well, go to his channel and you find out. Peace, everybody, and have a good night. Thanks for coming. Made me feel better. Bye.